Hi, welcome to Caribou Country Lifestyle. My name is Cheryl. Today I want to talk about making seed starting easier. Seed starting can seem tricky and complicated, but it doesn't have to be. I just want to help you with a few tips for making seed starting a lot easier. One tip is sowing at the right time. If you struggle with low germination, getting your timing right is the first place to start. Check your frost dates, planting times, and the conditions for your plants that you're going to be growing. Some plants can't handle the cold, and others can't handle the heat once they're mature. Last frost date is an important date to remember too, because you want to make sure that you bring your plants in before your last frost date or protect them by covering them as well. The next tip is following the instructions for planting your seeds. You have to remember that your seed packages come with planting instructions as well. I have, for instance, here's a pepper plant, and on the back of it, it gives you the sowing depth, how far to space your rows, how much to space your plants, and how many days to maturity when you can expect that those peppers will be ready for the picking. And for me here in Canada, I have a planting guide, and I got this from the Vessey's website, and they have a 101 planting guide, and it has anything from starting your seeds, and it has a lot of information. And it will talk about your vegetable seeds, and it will tell you when to start them, how many weeks to start them in advance if you want to start seeds inside. And also it will also talk about the watering, spacing of the seeds, whether to cover the seeds or not cover the seeds when you're starting your seeds. And also it will tell you if you need to up pot your plants, like peppers, tomatoes, what's another one? Sometimes I up pot some of my flowers, like snapdragons. The seeds are quite small, and so I just sprinkle some seeds into a cell, and then what I do is I separate the seeds, and then you can up pot those seedlings into another pot where then they'll be in their own individual pots. I also have another, West Coast Seeds has a gardening guide as well. Depending on where you buy your seeds from, if you have a store, or for us it's a feed store that carries West Coast Seeds, a lot of times that's where I've been able to find those gardening guides, and you can also find them online, like I say, with Vessey's as well. The next step is labeling. For me, when I'm going to be planting my seeds and I have them in my trays, I want to make sure that I have the labels. It makes it a whole lot easier setting up your trays and sowing your seeds if the variety, because when you're doing variety after variety, don't try to go on memory alone, because that's where you will run into problems. You think you will remember which one is which, but when you're doing, for me, I do like 8 different varieties of peppers. So you want to make sure that you have those labels, and all you have to do is pull out your labels, write down on each label all the varieties that you're going to be starting, so that once you do start those seeds, then you just need to pop in those labels in each of the cells of the seeds that you're going to be starting. It makes things a whole lot easier. You definitely don't want to be going on memory. I tried, and it never works. Another thing is taking notes. Pick yourself up a cheap notebook. I got this at Walmart, costed me like $3, and then you can decorate it to however you want to do. They also have gardening journals out. They're a little bit more pricey, but you want to make sure that you're writing down when you start your seeds, write down the date that you started your seeds. On your packet, it'll tell you how many days it'll take before those, it gives you a guideline of how many days it'll take before your seeds actually sprout out of the ground. You want to write that down so you can use that information, and you definitely want to be writing that stuff down as the plant is growing. You're going to write down if you've had to up pot it, you'll write down when you put them outside to getting them climatized for outdoors. Write that down. Write down when you have them out in the garden and how they're doing, and if you had to do any amendments to, maybe you had to add more fertilizer, you want to write that down as well. That will help you for keeping track of the different plants that you do. And I have a book here, and now I'm going to be writing into 2025, but I wrote down every variety of plant that I have in here. Then I wrote down how many days it took for them to sprout. Then I wrote down when I added a fertilizer to them too. And then what that does is that helps you in the future, as the years go on, what has worked and what hasn't worked. So you definitely want to be keeping those notes. Taking those notes is a valuable resource for you. And I know it seems like it's a time investment, but it's worth it in the long run. Another tip is making your own soil mix. I don't make my own soil mix. I actually buy a variety of different bales. I always go with the large bale of soil mix because I start a lot of seeds. And with that, I'm also up potting a lot of my plants. I need a lot of dirt. And I'll get these bales usually you can get them at your local feed store. I've got them at Art Nap. I've seen them at Home Depot. And, there's another place too that my sister... The right soil mix is good for your germination and growth. You could buy the starter mix. It is a little more pricey. I've seen the Jiffy's seedling starter mix, and it's like a small bag. I think it's like about, 8 liters or something like that, and it costs you about almost $10 for a bag like that. This one here, I think when I bought this, it was $20. So that's a pretty good deal if you can find a good deal like that. And I think I bought it in the fall, and I just picked up 2 big bags. I got another kind, I forget what it was called. I think it was just a regular Sungrow, whereas this one is the Sunshine Mix. But I bought the regular Sungrow as well, and I've used it and it has worked well for me. The basic components, if you were to be making your own mix, you want to have some of the basic components are coconut coir, vermiculite, and perlite. This one does not have vermiculite, but it does have the perlite in it. And you can tailor your mix to the needs of your plants as well. So, I would rather just purchase it. I've even known people that have done a little bit of gardening soil and mixed compost, But what you want to do with that, especially if you're going to be using it for a seed starter mix, you want to make sure that you've sifted and gotten out any large chunks, because you don't want any large pieces of wood or different types of debris in it that is going to affect those seeds and their germination rate for that as well. My next tip is watering from the bottom. If you're watering after you've planted your seeds and you're watering from the top, what ends up happening is some of those seeds are quite small, and you're actually, if you water it from the top, you're going to dislodge and move that seed around. So let's say I have my dirt in my tray and I've planted my seeds, and now I want to water. You're going to water in this bottom tray. Down below, have your plants in there, and what you can do is just have it so that the water is soaked up into the soil, which is going to soften that seed shell, and that's how it ends up it doesn't disturb the seed, and it ends up helping the seed germinate into the soil. If you find that once you've found that the soil has soaked up that water, you can always remove the cell. Like, this is all one cell, but so I could put my plant in here. I put the water in there. Once I know that the water has soaked up into the soil, I can remove my pot and put it back into a tray that doesn't have any water in the bottom of it, and that will help so that your plants don't get waterlogged either, because if you have too much water in your soil, then that's what's going to cause a lot of the diseases to have started, like the damping off, where then you notice that there's a white mildewy, it's almost like it's a type of a fungus that's growing on top of your soil, and that your plants aren't even going to make it. And what they'll do is they'll be so wet that they'll just shrivel up and won't even continue to grow. They'll just rot off right at the base of your plant, and you don't want that. You've put all that work into starting these plants. You want to give them the best growing conditions that you can provide. And without that waterlogging in your soil, you'll end up with stronger roots. My next tip is using a heat mat. I use heat mats. These are a great way of starting your seeds indoors, and for some of those seeds that need that heat to be able to speed up the germination, or they need that heat to germinate, like your tomatoes and your peppers and your eggplants. So these heat mats, they get anywhere in between 24 and 30 degrees Celsius, which is 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is just a constant heat. Now, when I have these plugged in, I have my lights and my heat mats are all plugged in, and they're on a timer. So they come on super early in the morning. I think I have it set to come on at like 5 in the morning. And then I have them going off at about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So that gives those plants a chance to get that little bit of a cooling period, and then they'll come on at 5 in the morning, and it warms the dirt up to help being able to germinate those seeds. You want to be able to provide the right conditions for your plants, and having that heat mat is an important condition for a lot of plants. There's some plants that do not need any heat mats or heat at all. They actually do better in cool climates, like pansies do not need that heat. They actually like to have no heat and be in total darkness. And so with the heat mat, you will just put it on your stand, and then you're going to put your tray on top of it, and your cells will be filled with the dirt, and then that is just there. It's not going to get too hot. It's always at a consistent temperature. Another tip is whether or not to cover your tray with the dome. Covering your tray with the dome after you've planted your seeds, right after you've planted your seeds, you want to cover it, and what that does is that traps in the moisture, which will produce humidity, which also helps with the germination rate of your seeds, getting them going. Once you notice, like you'll lift up your dome, and once you notice that you see any type of seeds that have started to sprout and the little plant is emerged through the ground, you'll want to remove this tray, because you don't need that tray or this dome. You don't need that dome anymore on the top. Now you want to have them having the airflow, because that airflow is going to help get your plants so that they are growing stronger and sturdier. And if you have that, keep having that dome on, it's going to be the same thing. After a while, it's also going to make things too humid, and then your plants are going to end up with diseases and fungal growth in them. So you want to make sure that you take that dome off. With that dome on, it creates an ideal environment and you have for your germination, and then that just means you have less to, that's one more thing that you have less to worry about. Whether or not to use grow lights. Once you have that green growth that has appeared on your plants, you need to provide it with the right amount of sunlight. And that's not always available when you're starting your seeds indoors. So what you want to be providing for it is enough light. Sometimes you can put it in a bright window, but if you don't have a bright south-facing window to be able to have your plants in, then what they're going to do is they're going to get leggy and they're going to start reaching towards the light. If you use grow lights, and I have this stand here, I have 4 sets of grow lights on this stand over here. And on this stand, I have 2 sets of grow lights. And with the grow lights, I'll have them on a timer, like I was saying before, and I want to have that timer set so that it's anywhere from 14 to 16 hours that it comes on a day. Those seedlings need that much light to be able to get them ready for my growing season. And the grow lights allow you to be able to grow anywhere. I used to live in a mobile home, and I would have this like little corner in my living room, and I had this stand that my husband had made me, and I was able to start my plants in our mobile home where you don't have a lot of bright light being able to come in. So I have been fortunate enough to have those grow lights, and that way with the grow lights as well, it's going to have your plants growing up towards the light, which will keep them straight instead of leaning to try and reach for light. Some grow lights come with timers. Mine does not. I actually have a timer that I have to set up, and I will plug it in with this extension cord before, and then I plug all my lights and my heat mats into this piece here, and then I'll have this all set so that it comes on early in the morning, and it doesn't go off until later in the evening, about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to have these grow lights, and that makes things a lot easier for me. I start a lot of plants. I can fit 16 flats of plants on this one, on this stand over here, and then on this stand here, I can fit another 8 more. So I have 24 flats of plants that I'm starting. But then it gets to a point that I actually have too many for even my plant stands. And then I'm starting to put plants, once they're very well established, I'm putting them in my, I have a patio door down here that provides some light, and I put my plants in there just because I am like using every nook and cranny that I can find to get these plants going. My next tip is setting reminders for watering. You want to make sure that you are watering consistently. It's really important. And so you can either set your reminders physically with a little post-it note. I would put one maybe on my fridge upstairs, because for me, my plants are downstairs. So having that reminder upstairs, just water your plants, or you could use it electronically on your phone, as it'll send a little reminder to come and water your plants. Then as time goes on, you kind of get into a habit. Like usually I just come down here every morning before I go to work, and I check my plants and I see what needs to be watered and what doesn't need to be watered. Just because your reminder comes on doesn't always mean that your plants need to be watered. And a lot of times I just will lift up the dome, see what needs to be watered, if anything needs to be watered. Once you take the dome off, and especially if you have those lights on, you have a heat mat going, they're going to dry out a lot quicker. And then that airflow also kind of dries things out. And that's not a bad thing, but you want to just be cognizant of when you're watering, when to water and when not to water too. Because leaving the soil and not watering, it will dry out, and then your plant is just going to wilt. And if you wait too long and it is past the point of wilting, you can pour water in there and it's done for. It probably is not going to recoup back. So you just want to really pay attention and check on your plants on a regular basis. And with that little bit of help, your plants will be watered and happy and healthy, and they will love you for it. For me, I have 3 types of watering. I have just a spray that you can set it so it's in a stream or very fine mist. I have this bottle, I get it from the dollar store. This one, it has a pumping action, and it's a little bit stronger than this one here, and it's okay for once the plant is established, and just watering around the base of the plant is good too. I use this for watering beneath, under the plants, like I was talking about. You want to bottom water. I use this for bottom watering. My last tip, have fertilizer ready. After the first true leaves appear, you can apply a boost of nutrients to fuel plants' growth. All you need is just a light feeding, and for me, I use this plant starter fertilizer. It's a 10-52-10, and when I do use this, I actually only use half the strength. I don't want to use the full strength that they recommend on the bottle. I use half the strength, and what you can do is you can have your watering can ready and have this pre-mixed in the watering can ready to go, so you could have this separate can and have it pre-mixed with fertilizer in it, and then you can have another watering can that just has straight water in it. So then it's always access ready to go, and then you might want to write on, this one has fertilizer in it, this one is just water. And that will help things, keeping things organized and that they're ready to go. And the fertilizing varies with the different plants. Some plants you can fertilize them once a week, and other plants you're going to fertilize once every 2 weeks. It all depends on the plants. Gardening guides, whether it's the West Coast Seed Gardening Guide or the Vesey's Gardening Guide, a lot of times they will tell you how often you should be fertilizing your plants. So that's just a few things that you might want to consider if you're thinking about starting your seeds indoors. If you're not, that's fine. I know tons of people that are just as happy to go and buy their seeds from the different nurseries that are in their area. I mean, I'm guilty. I start all these plants here inside, and I'll still go and find a few plants in the nurseries. Sometimes, especially with herbs, I find that starting herbs isn't always the most successful for me, and I will just go and buy. I think every year I buy a mint plant because I can't seem to get mint to start. I try it every year. I don't ever stop trying, but I do try it every year, and I haven't been successful yet, but one of these times I'm sure I'm going to be successful. Sorry for the noise upstairs. My husband is doing some little bit of renovating. He's actually putting in the trim around our living room window that we still hadn't done. We did a bunch of renovations upstairs 3 years ago, and he's just putting in the trim in that has needed that in the last 3 years, and he's getting around to getting that done. So that's awesome. So I hope you found this information helpful, and I just want to say happy planting. I know that we're not really at the time right as of yet. We're in the new year, but for me, I will be probably starting some plants towards the end of February, maybe the middle to the end of February. So thanks for joining me. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.